Yeah, so the main objective is to make everyone, even technical, non-technical, or even non-IT, like doctors. Nowadays, doctors are doing better coding than developers, but anyone that is not used to an IT terminology, make them aware of what FHIR is. And let's assume that anybody interested in FHIR wants to do some kind of an analysis, how the resources work. Like, so there is a patient resource, and then there is a practitioner resource, and there is a condition, and condition has observation and all that, right? So how does the linkages happen, and how to traverse between one to other, how to query, what parameters are available for querying, mainly for analysis purpose. We have some mock data. So the data that you see is not live. So that will disappoint you in terms of what you see. But the intention is to just make everyone aware of and getting used to what FHIR is. That's the objective. So we did this in two parts. So the first part will be covering just how to use FHIR using a browser. So first we'll query, and then time permitting, we'll try to make some updates. But after that, so there is a second session planned for tomorrow morning, Sunday. So in that, it's mainly about code and what smart on FHIR is, what technologies. I mean, we are running through one code server, and how the server is, the layout of the server. What to do if we want to do coding with that server, and what are the open source opportunities available within HL7 India. Like the server is far from complete, because FHIR has almost 150 APIs at various levels of maturity. And right now, the server that I have is 7. So there is a long way to go. So that's the whole objective of the 2-day program. So we have 19 people now. It's a good participation. Let's get started. If you go onto the slides remote. So my name is Venu, and thanks everyone for joining this session. I'm the co-founder and managing director, chief architect, senior developer, everything for a startup called APRise IT Solutions. So this is mainly about FHIR and GraphQL as a technology, how we can use it with FHIR. This is expected to be a beginner session, and we will stop at there. I mean, even for the second part, this is a 2-part series. Then for the second part, we'll just explain the core constructs and we'll stop there. So that said, the REST is a kind of a technology paradigm called representational state transfer, where any object or resource on the internet could be queried if they have enough permissions. So GraphQL is a query language, meaning it's not a database or it's not a file system. You can plug it with any of your database, so long as you provide right connections and you tell it what to query for you, it will do it. And it does it in an intelligent way, such that you get only what you need and nothing more. And this is very useful, and this is pretty cool, because right now, if you use a REST API to query anything, it's either a 0 or 1. I mean, it's either black or white. You get the resource or you don't get it, right? And with healthcare, you can see that, and you will see in the examples also, that there is a lot of complex data. I think no one disagrees that. And querying that might actually leads to a lot of bundling of, meaning you're getting loads and loads of data. And in cases where we use mobile clients, meaning the networks could be intermittent, even some of the remotest locations, the network could be intermittent. We'll be lucky if we had a 2G or even a broadband. In that kind of scenarios, GraphQL will help us fetch those queries much more effectively. There are some technology decisions to be made, but right now, let's not concentrate on that and just look at how can we use GraphQL with FHIR. So is anyone not aware of FHIR? So we want to make this interactive. So anytime in the session, if you have any question, just raise your hand, and I'll pause there and we'll take it. I assume everyone is aware of FHIR. FHIR is a specification by HL7. It's a standards-based company. HL7 has been in the healthcare industry for a very long time. But FHIR, however, is like in existence pretty, I think in its initial stages by HL7 standards. So FHIR has a specification for GraphQL, and GraphQL as a technology was developed at Facebook. Initially, it used to have a BSD3 license, which is considered as open but not open kind. But now GraphQL has been transferred over to GraphQL Foundation, and a lot of libraries on GitHub have an MIT license, which is an open source license. And I mean, if I get the trends right, Facebook wants to make this as an open source, completely open source. Right. So in REST, we understand that there will be a base URL, meaning www.hospitalabc.com or payerabc.com. And then if you want to get any resource from that, let's assume we are getting a patient resource, then we do a / and write a patient and the search arguments for it and retrieve the resource. In GraphQL, however, we'll have a single endpoint. So that is the base URL. So if the hospital is .com/$GraphQL is what FHIR recommends. That's anyway the standard way of doing GraphQL. So just /GraphQL and everything else is in the query parameters, right? And then so FHIR has a conformance on GraphQL, and FHIR says that a few things. If you are interested in doing GraphQL, it has to be done in this way. Queries is something we'll be doing today, and mutations also, time permitting. We'll walk through them. So any server that would like to use GraphQL should support queries and mutations. There are certain directives like skip and include. They need to be supported, and in the conformance statement, there should be a mention that there is a plan to use support GraphQL. So that's how anyone that's wanting to query a resource would know that we would support a GraphQL endpoint as well, and support all the CRUD operations. And they also say, I won't read out everything, but what they also say is that although there are a number of resources on FHIR, let's assume you are putting up a FHIR server. Does it mean that I have to support all those 150 or plus resources? FHIR is rapidly evolving, and they don't expect us to support all the resources. And in turn, what they say is that while this is a minimum conformance requirement, if we want to add more query parameters or support even more CRUD operations on the resources, we can go and do that and specify that in our conformance statement. With that, let me stop here and ask for any questions. Any questions? No, I think everyone is wanting to go to the browser. Okay, let me move on.
Good evening, Mr.
Sorry?
Yeah, I'm Pradeep Kumar.
Yes, Pradeep. Your voice is pretty low. Like, is it only me?
Is it okay now?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Actually, for a long time, I'm having this doubt in my mind.
Yes.
I used to refer some video tutorials and some reference materials too.
Mm.
But from this database of that EMR system, how directly this FHIR will fetch the record? If possible, give some input.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So we need to have a FHIR server implementation, right? And then there is a smart on FHIR spec where it says how to connect to an FHIR server from an EHR and outside of an EHR, like as a standalone. But basically, the way GraphQL sees anything is it's a server. So long as you provide the connection strings to it, wherever they are, it would connect to it. More about EHRs probably we can take tomorrow, right? This is mainly supposed to be like an introductory session on how can we use GraphQL with FHIR. So what we will do, you will have I'm just putting the link to the it's there. It's there. The link is now come out. So yeah. So first check, can everyone see this? So just copy the link from the message window, open a browser, paste the URL, and can you see the screen? Just give me, is it possible to do a thumbs up in this? Or maybe one can say whether they can see it or not.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this, the way, this is only a development only arrangement from GraphQL. So GraphQL gives an endpoint called GraphIQL. Interactive query language is what it is. And in short, it is called as graphical. Graphical is a browser-based tool where we can use to easily play with the resources. This won't be allowed in live implementations. So through this, we could write queries. So for now, so we will start with one query with a simple patient. So what we'll do in this session is we'll write the queries with so everyone can open up the browser. We'll work on a few resources. Like I said, we only have 7 or 8 resources ready: patient, practitioner role, organization, location, schedule, slot, and appointment, right? We'll work on these resources, and time permitting we'll do more. And we'll also do a couple of real world examples, or close to real world, if not real world, right? So let's try to run, you can just clear out the browser. These are all comment statements. They're just for instruction only. Just select them all, clear them up, and let's write a patient query. So any query in GraphQL starts with the word query, like how you've seen on the screen. And there is a helper there because you may be doing it for the first time, right? So now what am I trying to do is I'm trying to query a patient. Their ID is patient. Want to put in the ID. Yeah, so their ID is patient 1234. I think you forgot to put the identifier right up, not here. Okay, yeah. And just so if they exist in the database, just show me, confirm their identity, just that, right? Simple query. And so this can happen a lot of times when somebody is trying to log in, whether the identity is there or not. And anyway, we're just trying to get used to it. So then click the play button. If you click the play button, then you just see the data as it is. And normally what would have happened in a typical REST world is that you would have gotten the entire FHIR resource. Whereas because we told GraphQL that we are interested only in the identifier of the patient and nothing much. I mean, this is a dumb query. You would never query like this just to get used. But because we told GraphQL that I'm only interested in the identifier, you only got the identifier. So Dr. Pramod, can you confirm you're able to do this, or anyone else on the call? Developers?
Yes, I can. I will wait for anybody else to please.
Okay. Does everyone have the endpoint? Okay, Shiva has told yes, Philip has told yes, Murli has told. Okay, great. Yeah, wonderful. Let's go on to. So now let's try to query more fields, right? Meaning the patient resource has more fields. Whatever we have done is just a hello world thing. It's not of any use. So now where do we know that where the fields are? So what you're seeing on the screen on the split window of the browser is the patient resource from the HL7R4 release, right? So let's try to query their name. Let's try to add name first. No, that's fine. I'll keep it like, okay. Yeah, let's add name and then run the query. Yeah. So name is a complex data set. So yeah. And I think at any point we don't know. One way to check what options are allowed in any query at any point is to just hit enter and press a space bar, control and space. So, so it actually identifies at what stage in the query it is and what are the possible options. So like right now here, I can do a prefix. Underscore is a special operation. We don't want to talk about it now, but I can also query for prefix. So I can put a prefix also if I want and run the query one more time. Just put the prefix and run. Yeah. So then it says that, okay, the prefix is Mr. and the name of the patient is Johnny Black, right? And now let's try to also go to the FHIR spec and see what other fields we can. It depends on implementation. But for now, I think it's important to get their communication and what language do they speak. Right. So let's actually put in communication and yeah, so communication and then press a control space so that, no, go back. Communication and then control space. Or just put control communication and hit a play or see what happens. So it gives you a small underline there, meaning you need to do something. Just hover over the underline and it says you that field communication of type must have subfields, meaning it's saying that, look, you can't just directly query a parent field. You need to still specify some more things, right? So then it also says that you need to open up a curly braces. So let's open up curly braces there. And then here, let's press control space again. And there we're interested in language for now. And then language also, it says you need, so language again, let's go to the FHIR spec. Language is a codable concept, meaning codable concept is a special data type in FHIR. What it says simply from a program standpoint is there is a code, then there is a coding, and then there is a display value for it. So we're not trying to get functional on FHIR here. So let's try to put what, yeah, so yeah, coding, code, yeah. And then there is a display, yeah. So let's run the query. And it says that, yeah, so the communication language for this patient is Hindi and the code is HI. So normally if we have a proper value sets and the terminology is defined, then we can even get the name of the terminology system and these values would come from that. So those values also need to be inputted into the system and they will be exchanged. Right? So let's pause here. Let's go back to the FHIR window. Any questions thus far? Now, how is GraphQL able to know all these things, right? That's one question. Like, how can GraphQL know that only language is only allowed inside of communication? To the right-hand side, there is a small twisty there called docs. So GraphQL in itself, so technology is smart sometimes, but it needs to be told. So GraphQL is a typed language. So all these schemas are defined in GraphQL. So right now we read a query. Let's go to query, right? Query, and let's go to patient inside query. Stop me if I'm going too fast. Yeah, so let's go to patient. So it is from here, it is getting all those values. It also tells what arguments. So like at the top, you could see arguments. So it says what arguments I can use in the context of this query. Right. So these schemas have been fed into it, and we loaded all of them through that endpoint when we loaded it up. Similarly, we could also query address as well, but let's get on to some more things. We can close the schema there. So now let's assume that I want to fetch a list of patients. This is one patient, but I may have a number of patients, and I want to do some queries on them. Right? So that's the bundle, FHIR bundle. Can you go share the FHIR spec? So that's the bundle resource in FHIR, and the FHIR spec for GraphQL says that all the bundles would be handled as lists. So let's now rewrite our query. Select all, delete, put in query again, open braces, open and close braces. So now let's type patient and see what it comes up. Just type patient. Yeah, so there is a patient list. So now because we're trying to do a bundle here, let's do a patient list. Yeah. And then open and and let's go to bundle again, the FHIR resource. So here, the bundle has an identifier, but because bundle has number of resources in it, so entry is where it would all those. So entry is like a big container or an array where all these would be loaded into it. So what we are trying to do is we should first try to load the resource from the entry. So the next thing is entry, and just hover over entry, see what it says. Yeah, so it says it's an array, so we need to open up a curly brace again. Yeah. And here we would say that, okay, in the entry, I know that there in a bundle, you are expected to see a lot of resources. And in the resources, the way you typically deal with is you need to tell the bundle, you need to tell the query that this is a bundle that can have any number of resources. But for now, I am interested in looking at a patient resource, right? And now we can ask it to give us all the things that we previously did. Give me the identifier. Give me the identifiers are only the only time when you deal with identifiers is in practice labs. In real world, most of the times nobody does it with identifiers, but this is a lab, so. Let's also put in prefix. And I can also ask it to give me the communication, and don't give me everything, but just tell me what language do they speak. I don't need the code. Right. Let's try to run this and see if it works. Yeah, so the way to check quickly whether it has worked is to see how many resources it has fetched. So right now it's a test database and I have only 3 patients inside there. So number 1 is the patient 1, 2, 3, 4, which we already saw, and we got all the information of that patient. And the number 2 is another patient 5, 6, 7, 8. The name is Lisa Roberts, and the language they speak is English. And then there is a third patient, XYZ. And they don't. So this is just a simple query, and there will be extensions and there will be bindings. We are not going through all of them. They have to be dealt with the system that is inputting those bindings. Right. Shiva has a question. Is there a way to get all the attributes inside communication without having to specify all fields? Yes, there is. But I think for that you have to do flatten, Shiva. Right now, there's asymmetric support. Flatten. I think asymmetric doesn't support flatten. So and they have opened up a PR on their issue on their GitHub repo. But I think it is possible. So once you flatten, you will be able to get all the attributes. So that's actually a very good question. I mean, it's a developer question, but right now we need to give it what we want. Right. So what else? Is this okay? Is the space okay, or am I going too slow, too fast?
I'm sure you're going slow for the developers, but then we doctors are chugging along. So I think your pace should be okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's the point, Dr.
So when a question. So this query that you have written does what? Like, so it returns the fields, but is it just query, just asking for all the patients, or how to interpret this query?
Oh, okay. So we are using a dummy browser right now, but if we are using real world implementations, so you would have a nice real GUI, and where you would be saying that get all patients, right? So you would have one button saying get all, and you may have actually options to select what fields you want, right? So those fields would be populated into this query, whatever you want, and then it goes to GraphQL and it fetches you exactly that.
Okay, so it's a get all patient, right?
Yeah, get all, yeah, bundle, yeah. So it's a get all patient. So you will have combinations of various resources in the bundle we'll get through it. Right. So now let's move on to the next resource, and this time let's go to a practitioner. Right. So let's query. So one common practice is that never type everything yourself. Sorry. Query and the way to put such parameters, there is a little bit of syntax that's required. So I'm trying to find for practitioner. Is it capital P? Right. So what this does is it checks, similar to the patient query, it checks whether I have a practitioner, and if I have a practitioner, okay, I got it. Right. Now let's go to the FHIR spec and pull this down. And I have the practitioners resource, the HL7 FHIR resource. I can do the same thing. I can get their name. I can get their qualification also. If I'm interested, I can get their communication. So let me try to okay. So the best way to try, I mean, to get familiarized is to like put a parameter and see if it works and then check it. If there are errors, it will point out, but we will not be wasting a lot of time. Let's check if there is any, isn't there a communication for? Let's see what it says. Okay, that's because we haven't entered anything in the database. So now let's do a quick bundle query. And let's query all the practitioners in the database or in the system. Oh, sorry. So I need an entry here. bundles have the entry. So the first thing when we're trying to do a bundle query is put an entry, and then we're saying I'm looking for something called as resource. And when you find a resource like practitioner, then give me their, no, this time I'm not interested in their identifier, just give me their name. Right? So what it does is it gives all the names. There are, I think, 4 doctors, 4 practitioners. So there are 4 resources, and I got only the name all the time. Right. So in a typical Rust world, there are innovative ways, but in a typical Rust world, you would have got 4 full resources. So this is practitioner. Is there any question? And any questions here? Let me pause. So we have done this. The next is to, Acha, okay, one question. So how do I know what parameters I can query? One is go here and look at the resource we are interested in and get to that and get here like all the search arguments that we could use. Right? Another way is to actually go to the spec itself. And look for something called search parameters. It's normally at the bottom of the FHIR spec. And it also says what operations are possible on a resource. Right? So if a specific resource is not searchable, it's most likely because the spec hasn't allowed search parameters or even the operations on them. So that's how even this schema works. This schema is strictly typed, so it works exactly as per the FHIR spec. Right. So now let's do organization. Okay. Now, if everyone is okay, I'll try to fast track a bit and probably do only bundle queries. Is it okay?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, this is anyway a practice. So, so again, just let's query the name for now. Let's see if it runs. Is the spelling wrong? Now, why don't you go to the PowerPoint? Acha, I need to specify. So yeah, that's one thing. So we haven't, when you program, so we need to specify what all the possible combinations. So for now, what we have enabled is the type healthcare provider. So type is a search parameter. Am I typing it right? Okay. And this is also FHIR spec, the type. And let's see if I'm lucky. Yeah. So we have 2 hospitals.
So do we always have to keep that type, or means will
No,
it take
so
a default?
okay. No, that's a good question. So the type, I mean, don't get type confused with the data type. Okay, this is not exactly data type. This is organization type, right? So FHIR says that if you want to query an organization of type, type is the search parameter. So what kind of an organization is that? That is the type variable. Now, there is also possible, like we did the bundle operations before, we did not give it any search parameter, right? It just fetched us the a list of the organizations, but that is because we have written the query or so it's called resolver. Whatever you tell GraphQL to fetch is what it will fetch. So in this case, we did not ask GraphQL in the backend, which you are not seeing, to query and fetch anything and everything in anything with organization resource. Query everything. That's not something we have done, because this was written only to suit our requirement, and in that requirement, the main thing was to, for now, query all the types that are of healthcare provider. So if I did, because this query goes back to the server, and server it looks for the exact patterns that we are querying here. If that pattern is not found on the server, then you won't be returned any result. So it is also important to tie your front end and the back end.
Understand. So if I have that type, and if I still don't want one particular healthcare provider, if I want to get all the types, means is there a value that that can be given over there instead of a distinct healthcare provider?
Yeah, there is a skip directive. So if you don't want to see anyone of a certain type, then you could skip those values.
Okay.
Similar to skip include, first, flatten, all those. Skip and include right now are supported on this server. Flatten is not supported.
Okay.
Yeah. Did that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now let's, so this is organization. Now let's try to query on locations as well. So this is query of, sorry. This is a query, and what I want is location list. Is there any search parameter there? Oh, okay. What's the parameter there? Organization. It's organization. There is something wrong. Yeah, I haven't completed the query. Yeah. So let me. Oh, okay. This is list. It will still work. Only that you won't see any lists, because the identifier here is the identifier of the bundle and not the resources. Right. So entry resource. So whenever you see something as location, I'm interested. So I got this, right? There is only one location for this hospital. Okay. And this again, so we have written the query only for that organization. So we got only that. So it depends on what queries we have enabled in the backend. So that's why you see all the specs saying that these are allowed, these are not allowed. This is one reason, and also the business reasons. So let's go to the PowerPoint. Any questions so far? Why am I not seeing virtual? Acha, I'm sorry. So there is a virtual. So right now, virtual means it's not a physical location. So if there is any interest in putting up online locations, this is one way to do it. I don't know if there is any other way to show that the location is not a physical location and it's an online. And this is one of the examples that HL7 has listed out. So I'm seeing two resources here. My bad, yeah, two resources. Again, for this query parameters, we go to the FHIR spec and check what are allowed and what are not allowed, right? So that brings us into our first, not so real world, but real world problem. So now if I want to write a query to get all the practitioners with a specialty of cardiology, along with their, so meaning I want the name of the practitioner, I want the organization they belong to, the location where they work, it may be more than one location, and their qualification. What should I be doing? Right. So this is a do-it-yourself exercise. So I'll wait for 5 minutes or 10 minutes maybe. Now the time is 4:45. In another 10 minutes, so like 4:55, we'll see how many are able to do, but I'll give you a small hint on how to do this kind of things, right? And this is the real world scenarios that we will get into on day one itself when we start on the real world, right? So, and how do we do something like this? So we need to understand, to be able to do something like this, we need to understand how these resources work, right? So now I'm trying to find all the practitioners with a specialty. So specialty is a query parameter on the practitioner role resource, right? Where I can have specialty equal to cardiology. I can also get the organization that they work for. So again, so I have to do a query on the organization they work for. And then I also have the locations they work. And sorry, where is the qualification? In the practitioner, right? In the practitioner is where I would have their name and their qualification. So I'll pause here. I'll pause the recording also. So I'll pause here and try it out yourself to see if you can do it. And we'll discuss this in 8 minutes.
One minute, just one question.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question is this: like after query, you have like a location list, and then you have given organization / ABC hospital, right? So what is this location list?
List of all locations in the database.
No. Location list is a named query. What exactly, or is it just an attribute that you have mentioned there?
Oh, okay. So if we want to do bundle queries in GraphQL on various resources, right? Get me the list of all locations, right? The way to say that is query location list, and then in the brackets mention all the query parameters that we are looking for. So location list is a way of telling GraphQL that
instead of location. Yeah, go ahead, completely.
So yeah, so location list is a way of telling GraphQL that get me a bundle of locations.
But here you have basically actually specified a given.
So if I say
in your by choosing ABC hospitals, you've actually specified a given.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Organization. That's what you've done.
Yeah. So what I'm saying there is because I'm not interested in all the locations. I'm interested in locations for that organization only. This is just a sample query. So if I want to do something like that, I will specify these search parameters, and the server should support my query, and I should be able to query on them.
So then let me ask a stupid question.
Yes, yes.
Similarly, I
So
can
if I
use sorry, go ahead, please go ahead.
So if I
Kumar,
write
please.
ABC list, then also the result will be the same, right? So instead of location list, if I write
Oh, no,
ABC
no.
list, then also the result will be the same, right?
So ABC is not a resource in FHIR.
But location list is also not a resource, right?
Yeah, but the GraphQL spec of FHIR says that if you want to do a bundle query of resources, you need to say is resource and then add list to the.
Then do this list. Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
Okay,
Yeah. Very good question.
Got it.
Yeah, Dr. Pramod.
So then similarly, if I wanted to say observations, and in observations only pick up, say, the BP,
Yes, sir.
I would say observation / BP or something to that effect.
So I did not look at the observation resource as much, but what you would
Conceptually, it will be something
Yeah.
like that, right?
Yeah,
That's the
conceptually,
filtering system.
yeah, conceptually it would be like a query observation list, and then whatever search parameter is that, and then the value for it, and then
So one more question then. Could I have said organization / ABC hospital / BCD hospital / XYZ like that in one and give 3 or 4 parameters like that?
yeah, you could add and or operators. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You can do filters also. Okay. But filter is, I think, not allowed on all fields. So I have tried extensively on filter, but to be allowed on filter, I think, so that search parameters you have on FHIR, there should be a listing on that whether filter is allowed or not. So let's get back to our query. The query is get all the practitioners with the specialty. I think Shiva got close to it. So Shiva, all you had to put there was specialty equals to cardiology. Maybe you have done that by now. See your chat. Yeah, that's the way. Oh, my screen is stuck.
I was able to get to that, but I was not able to get like.
Yeah, the remaining ones. Yeah, good. Yeah. So the way to do something like that is. Sorry, the system is stuck a bit. Yeah, you can see that, right? So, like you have done, Shiva, query practitioner role list, because specialty exists in practitioner role, right? Then cardiology. Then it's a bundle, so you say entry, resource, and yeah, so this is given. No need for identifiers. Let's take it out. Yeah. Just do display. Yeah, this works, but he needs to do more. So we need to get their location and their name also. So here is where you want. So you're saying that get me the practitioner, but this practitioner is actually on a practitioner resource. So that's where like we are chaining from one resource to another resource, right? And then move ahead. Practitioner, yeah. And then there is a bit of an alias operator, like if a same variable is repeating, then you just write just for the query to work, right? And alias, but the actual field is name, but the query would treat that as location name and there would be no conflict between. So the location, so we said we want the location and its managing organization, right? So we'll go for there is a managing organization in the location resource. You see if this query works for now. So how many? Yeah, so we had two for that location. Is the location name same in both? No, it's not, because we said get me all the locations for that, right? And then we want to get their qualification also. So let's put in qualification. Qualification is inside of practitioner. Yeah. So the issuer of the qualification is also an organization. So and this is FHIR Spec. So this is where I think the colleges or the universities or the councils that issue the certificate or even the practice registration. That's fine. So let's just see one resource in qualification. So this is again our imperfect implementation. So one was for the license number. So that's why you see one. And the other one is actually the degree that was awarded. And then you also, if you scroll down, you will see when it was issued, the period start and the location that the practitioner works for. So what we achieved with this query is we achieved practitioners with a specialty of cardiology, their name, their qualification, the location they work for, and what is the organization. This is useful in terms of like when we want to do an appointment, let's say we want to do a fetch of show me all the doctors that are available to me in a location, right? So we could even take even search arguments for the location as well, which we did not do here, and then list them out, right? So that at any specific point in time, anyone that is available, we could even actually add more, like is the practitioner available? Like there is a practitioner availability exceptions. So if there are availability exceptions, then don't show them. We could do all those also. So that's why the bundle resource itself becomes very light if we use something like this. Or the other options like what Kumar had said. Right. So any questions on this?
You did specify cardiology in the Department of Cardiology, right? That's what it's telling me.
Yes. So practitioner role has a specialty.
Okay.
So I meant that. Now, yeah, I think it says the specialty of the practitioner. I think they may have more than one. Yeah, they can have more than one specialties, 0 to yeah. So any practitioner that has this specialty, like you asked, I think that's important question, Dr. Pramod.
Absolutely
So
important. Otherwise, you go and ask
organization-
someone like CMC Vellore about all the practitioners, you'll get 1,000 some 1,200 doctors.
Yeah. So the organization has to decide how they would want to organize their practitioners. Let's go to organization resource quickly. Is there a specialty there? Yeah, so there's no specialty here. So the specialty, like let's say, if you're putting that a doctor is working in a department, then the best place that is handled is in the practitioner role. Yeah. Now let's do more. Let's go back to our PowerPoint. 20 minutes left. We'll see what we can cover. So let me do a schedule query. Like I'll do a bundle. So schedule what it normally says is that give me all the schedules for a doctor, right? So schedule is, again, when we get into schedule appointment slot, the plot thickens a bit. Let's go and check the FHIR spec for so schedule has an actor field, and in the actor, because the schedule might be for only a specialty, or it might be for a doctor, it might be for a device, it might be for a location, it might be for a healthcare service. So when we are setting the schedule, it is important to know for whom we are setting the schedule for, right? So in this small example, what we are trying to do is we're trying to query the schedules of this, and a doctor may have more than one schedules. They may work in one place, they may do IPD, and they may do OPD, and the schedules are different. So now let's do a query schedule list, and what's the okay, practitioner 1, 2, 3, 4, and yeah. Date. Okay. 2020. 12. Date is also a very tricky field, always.
American system.
We're just getting the. So we need to tell what resource. Right. So right now I have only one schedule, but we can also do more and get all the schedules of the doctor. We can do slot also similarly. What slot means is there is a schedule from 9 to 6, but how many slots are busy, how many slots are overbooked, how many slots are taken, and what are the slots that are not available, right? So that's what slots is. Similarly, we could do a slot query also. But let's
Can I ask a question? Can
Yes,
I ask
sir.
a question?
Yeah.
So on that given day, it's possible that this practitioner is in morning in one hospital,
Yeah.
and then afternoon he spends in another hospital
Yeah.
or in a clinic, right?
Yeah.
So you will get the schedule back from both those different hospitals, or can we actually specify one of the locations in this now?
This query, so right now we are fetching only this query from one system.
Okay.
Right.
So you're saying from only that given one hospital, you're specifying the. Okay, fine. Okay, got it.
No, the way to do it is, so that's why the practitioner should set their schedule in one registry kind of location where everybody can do it, look at it, or let's assume, because there are various applications where the practitioner's schedule is shared, right? And the schedule is probably set in an EHR or HMS, HIS. So you set it there, but you send a schedule resource to the apps or any app that is using the schedule. So they will actually have the schedule reflected in the system. Otherwise, we are getting duplicate schedules and it will be error prone.
Gotcha. Okay.
Similar with the case of appointment also. So like, let's say that an appointment is booked. Now, where is the appointment booked? Let's say it's an online application, right? So, or a mobile app. So the appointment is booked in the mobile app, but it has to be updated in the EHR where the doctor will see. The doctor will look at the EHR. They won't look at the app, right? And let's assume that the doctor had to get into an emergency situation into an IPD for whatever reason. Then they would cancel the appointment, or maybe they would postpone the appointment, right? They would reschedule. Then that information also has to flow into the app. So when we deal with resources, that's why the APIs give you that objectivity that, look, I am changing this appointment, and it's only the appointment I'm sharing. And so long as it is appointment and I have mentioned my conformance standard to it, it's always interpreted in the same way by any receiving system or any intermediary system, anything. You can do whatever you want in the EHR, but so long as you are communicating, so long as you communicate the
So,
appointment.
okay, fine. Anyway, can I ask one more question, just because it is something relevant here? Yep. There are situations where, and yeah, EHR systems do, have those functionalities, where I can assign my patients for the evening today to another doctor because I got caught up in some emergency, right? Would a query like this be able to handle, or again, you have to update the log wherever that central log of the appointments are, is it?
So what we are trying to do here is an update to an appointment, right?
Okay.
So right now we have done only queries, but which is like, so there are these 4 letters: create, read, update, delete. So we have done only the read part. So the update is what will happen. So then what you do is you send an update.
Gotcha. Fine. Okay.
And then update will be reflected. Yeah. So similar is the case of appointment, but in short of time. So appointment also works the same way. Let's go to the appointment resource and do one complex query, and maybe we can stop there. Maybe, is it okay if we extend for another 10 minutes or so, like 5:40? Should be able to do this by then. So the appointment resource, the way it is written down is, there are a number of things in appointment, but we want to do one real world scenario, like get all the appointments for a practitioner, 1, 2, 3, 4, for a date, their specialty, their appointment type, is it a walk-in or is it a follow-up? They're specified in the FHIR spec. Who are the participants in that appointments? So even a device is a participant in some appointments. So is it practitioner, patient, location, healthcare service? And if it is a location, I also want to know what organization does that belong to, the start and end times of the appointment, the duration of the appointment, and is it a schedule for, sometimes knowing a schedule is also very important, which part of the day and all that. And the slot times. So let's try to write something like this. So we're trying to query all the appointments for a doctor on a date, which is today, participants. In this appointment, we have only 2 participants, so we'll write only 2 or 3. Yes, location. Yeah. So I think it was Shiva that asked the question, can I flatten? Flatten would have been very nice. Managing org.
Do you have to put an end? Because normally a slot, all you need to do is give a start, no, and then their appointment system will automatically have an endpoint for it, right?
Yeah, yeah. So end is just
Okay, you're just
field in it. Yeah.
we'll get that. Okay, you'll get it from that. So,
Yeah, yeah. We are only querying, right? So
right.
yeah. So how many appointments do we have? We have 2 appointments for the day. But like this, so this is very useful. That if a doctor wants to look at and just attend their appointments, all you need to do is share an appointment resource. And then if you want to do any manipulations, do as many of them as many times you are allowed. So the actor again is a very important field. There can be healthcare service. I haven't shown healthcare service yet. So actor may have, there may be a patient practitioner, a specialty, related person is somebody, a patient's relation, a device or a service. So it can get a lot more complex. And for a device, we can even have some parameters of that device. So we haven't done devices yet, but so we can do a query like this. And what we have not shown is sometimes query variables get very complex that the query variable itself is sometimes this long. So we can specify query variables here and minimize the query at the top. And this is just a GUI, but GraphQL allows those complex data types, like how FHIR itself has a lot of complex data types, right? I wanted to show one thing, a mutation. Maybe we'll just do a quick walk of mutation and we'll take any questions. Mutations in GraphQL are a way of doing the change, update, create, update, delete operations. So so far we have only done the read operations, but if we want to do any insert, like Dr. Pramod asked, so this is something we can. So patient create is the verb we will use. And this is again FHIR spec. There will be a patient update if we are doing an update, and then patient remove if we are doing a patient removal. So there won't be a patient create list. That is not possible because it doesn't make any sense. So what we're trying to do is we're just trying to put a patient into the system, and so the way to do it is it's just syntax. So let's not worry about syntax. We need to say what resource we are putting, the resource type of it, and the resource identifier, and rest is all the patient related information. Just change some of these. Yeah. Yes. So, and we have inserted the patient, and we have also told the system to give back the values that have been inserted. So these are all the query parameters. It's not necessary to put them, but it's nice to know that whatever I have given is updated into the patient. So this is GraphQL. I'm open for any questions. We'll do a more server deep dive tomorrow morning, just as a first session.
So therefore, the first part here is create, and then you went down and asked the query, right? That's what you've done here.
Yes, yeah. So I have told it to give me the query, whatever has been inserted, also return back some things to me so that I can use it.
You don't have to write query there as such.
Yeah, as such, you need not.
Okay.
But most probably what happens is if something has been inputted into the system, then I want to act on that, right? After the patient has been created, I want to book an appointment or an encounter. So get those details. Yeah. So this is it. Any questions so far?
I mean, my comment is after seeing what this needs, definitely I can understand why you are saying the registries have to be handled very carefully, and in fact a lot more thinking has to be done. In fact, it probably granularity wise, in a district, in a state, things like that. That's my only comment. But of course, I will keep quiet with that and let the others ask the more fruitful questions.
Yours is absolutely a fruitful question. Yeah. Either we got everything or we did not get anything.
When is there a way to do like reverse relationships? Like I want to get like all procedures for a patient or all diagnosis for a patient.
Yeah. So you start with that list. If you're wanting to get, so there is no way that you could put procedure inside a patient, right? So you start with a procedure list and put patient inside it.
Okay.
And from there you can get all the, so this is similar to that include, rev include, normal REST operations. All those possibilities are there. It's just that this server alone, GraphQL supports flatten and all that. This server alone, they are not yet ready to support flatten. If we did flatten, we don't need to write all these open, close, square braces and all. You can just write one flat list and then boom. Anything more? So FHIR has a spec for GraphQL. So whenever we plan to build a FHIR server, we need to take those definitions from FHIR, like how we take the JSON or the XML definitions, and then we need to apply to this. But in the server part, we'll see that it gets a lot more complicated. That if because GraphQL is a typed language, it has schema is what we are using for our query. Then it has the search parameters as parameters. It will also have input for the mutations, right? And then the constants. So it is better not to generate a schema or do a schema manually. That's what even the developers of GraphQL Facebook recommend. That never generate a schema on your own. You will face a lot of issues. That's one reason primarily why a lot of developers are not able to take advantage of this tool, this query language, this powerful query language. And that's why these guys, Asymmetric, they have done a very commendable job, and they have even given the server construct. We'll see tomorrow. They have even included Smart on FHIR on top of that. So all we need to do is just a little bit of application, and it's all open source. So if there are no questions, then
who are you referring to just now? If I may ask, Venu?
Yeah, go to the Asymmetric GitHub library. So, sir, the server that I am showing you, it's not that I have built. These guys have taken 2 years to build this server.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Just go to GitHub. Yeah. So this is the server. So they have given the pair. I mean, so all the queries. So to do the queries, we have to write a little bit of code. So that code I have written, but the construct itself is all done by these guys. And I'm hoping they will do R5 also when R5 comes up.
In India, as far as I can tell you, what at least that's what they're saying right now, is that we will be fixed on R4 as is, you take a sort of screenshot right now and you stay by it until the powers that we decide that, okay, now we are ready to move to the next stage. This is what we are being told.
Yeah.
It is not like we are going to move to R5 when R5 gets released. We will be still in R4 only.
No, so that's the case with all your ICDs also, right? ICD. And
ICDs, of course, we move a little more with the rest of the world. But in the case of FHIR, the rule is that R4 is what it is. And it will be till, a major step is taken to go to the next stage. It is not like we are going to go with the rest of the world. We'll be stuck in R4.
So Kumar Satyam said a golden word in the morning that FHIR implementation has to be community driven and it has to be bottoms up. So we want to build the community stronger and build our India-based profiles and give it to whoever that wants to use it.
Absolutely, that's what we have to do, man. That's what we have to do. But there's a lot to play here. Okay, like for example, I'll just give an example. If we have diagnostic report, right? And in diagnostic report, one of the things that are available on FHIR is device. But if you look at a clinical, there's something known as the Clinical Establishment Act. It says there very clearly who can give any sort of a diagnostic test report, right? It has to be signed by a pathologist. If it is certain type of only if it is certain type of reports, it has to be signed by an MBBS guy who's got certain qualifications. Things like this are there. So what I'm trying to say is the technology has to be within the regulations of the country.
Yeah. So if there are no questions, I will wrap it up. Thank you for your time on the weekend. I'll send out the schedule for tomorrow. It's 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Thank you so much.